This city loves and appreciates our sports, but there has been a huge void in professional soccer.
Our vision has always been about men's and women's professional soccer. Cleveland, we're in the game.
We're going to build a new pathway for players here in Cleveland.
The idea of having a professional team to have more amazing women to look up to would be super important for the city of Cleveland.
Well, Cleveland won't have long to wait to get those professional soccer teams, because today, Gina Prodan Kelly, Chief Marketing Officer of the Cleveland Soccer Group, joins the Soccer Business Podcast to discuss the launch of a new women's team and a new men's team, and news about what league they will play in. And there's a little bit of a surprise and a twist in that. All that is coming up on the Soccer Business Podcast. So, Gina, it's been really interesting to follow the journey that Cleveland Soccer Group has been on with the NWSL bid and everything you've been thinking about and talking about since then. But I understand you have, some news and some concrete developments you wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here to announce this, and also for being such a great person to talk to along the way. So Cleveland Soccer Group is launching a WPSL Pro team. It's a new, and I believe will be the first ever U.S. Soccer Federation sanctioned Division II Women's Professional Soccer League. We're a founding team in this league, and we are also making a pretty meaningful investment in launching and growing the league.
Yeah, so people who haven't heard of WPSL Pro, it started mainly as an amateur league 20-something years ago, yeah? But there was talk of the Pro League being a Division III league, but now you're telling us it's going to be a Division II league, yeah?
Yeah, so WPSL Pro is the next step for WPSL. So Women's Premier Soccer League started in 1998, and I believe it has over 130 teams right now, and it will still continue to operate as an amateur league. But it has, over the past 27 years, been the top developmental engine for the NWSL in particular. I believe it's 54% of all draftees for the NWSL played in WPSL at some point. And so when WPSL Pro was announced a few years ago, it was announced as a Division III concept. The founders, Sean Jones and Ben O'Nagel, they went into this with really high standards for what ownership looked like, what the player relationship looked like, and basically what the operational standards were going to be. And it was really based on that foundation of that, like the country's longest running and largest women's soccer league. So they really quickly were able to get really strong markets to come on, but also really quickly move from having what would qualify the league as a Division III to really up level and be able to go to market as a Division II.
Yeah, so that's all about the Pro League standards that U.S. Soccer Federation have. And I guess if they were working on a Division III league, which was going to have high standards, then perhaps that league wasn't as big as maybe they thought it was at the start of the process. Is that kind of how it worked?
When they announced this, I feel like the wave of and the momentum of women's sports hadn't quite gotten to where it is right now. And I think that especially, with the past two expansion processes for the NWSL and then with USL Super League launching, I think that, more markets are realizing that women's sports are a valuable thing to have in their city. And ownership groups are also, and investors are seeing this as a really investable opportunity that will continue to grow. So when WPSL Pro was announced, we're hardly at the beginning of women's sports, especially women's soccer, but I don't think that the momentum had really picked up. So as this league was kind of getting off the ground in terms of getting LOIs signed by different markets, it started to really pick up, and they were able to gain much more interest from teams, from ownership groups and investors.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that momentum, because obviously you can see that with what's going on with the NWSL. I mean, more broadly, you can see it with the WNBA as well, right? And these reports talking about how much revenue there's likely to be in the future in women's sports, and some huge numbers being thrown about. But there definitely does feel to have been a shift in the last 3 years, I'd say, maybe even the last 2 years. But you had this experience of bidding for a NWSL expansion franchise, and I mean, it's been really nice to see that we've seen so many expansion bids over the years where people bid for something, don't get it, and then we never hear anything from them. So you're here, you didn't get the franchise that you wanted, but you're here still building something else.
Yeah. So I led the campaign for our NWSL bid on the marketing side. As part of that group that was presenting the NWSL bid, I talked to a lot of people in our local community, in the greater soccer community, and in the NWSL and leagues all around the world. And in the middle of that process, not only was I beginning to understand how important the player value proposition was and developing a player pipeline was, the NWSL got rid of the draft. So it became really important for us, especially as Cleveland, to really understand how much value we brought to the table for players, and also think about how we could impact our region to create a stronger ecosystem to develop talent that is from here. So last summer, I actually signed the LOI and had planned on launching this team separate from our NWSL team, but have it be part of that ecosystem.
Right.
So when the league announced that Denver was getting the team, our group kind of paused, and it was right around the holidays, so we all took a couple weeks off to take a deep breath and let it go. But then talked about how do we make this happen? Because Cleveland obviously is a really strong market and, really wants, a professional women's soccer team. So we stopped and looked at at what opportunities we might have to buy a team, to join different leagues. But at the same time, we understood that we also had, this LOI that I had signed, and I had planned to launch this team regardless of what happened with the NWSL team.
Right.
And then as we continued to look at our options, we thought, not only did it feel right to go with this league so we could continue to set up that greater ecosystem and pipeline for the region, but it would also give us the flexibility and the opportunity to grow in whatever direction we wanted to in the future. So that was when Michael Murphy and I particularly sat down and said, what does it look like for us to join this league? And at the same time, what does it look like for us to help grow this league and make it something as big as it can be, especially with the opportunities we have in women's sports right now. And it was then that we started the conversations with the league to become investors in the league and help it grow. And also there were other markets. And these more markets will be announced over the next few weeks and months. But as that league began to grow, we all saw that opportunity to go from Division III to Division II. So that's kind of the way our full story came. It was, this didn't work, but we had that vision and that dream. It wasn't about, let's try it this one time. In fact, it was the second time Cleveland had bid for an NWSL team.
Right.
And it's also not the end of that. We believe that this is just the beginning of what we grow for soccer in Northeast Ohio. And so this is where we're starting with women's professional.
Yeah, I mean, that process of, they're quite long and intense processes, aren't they? The expansion bids. What in that process, you obviously engage with your community and you get season ticket pledges and so on, and you get an idea of what kind of sponsorship support you might get and so on. What did you learn through that process? Not so much about the NWSL, because they're tough processes, aren't they? But what did you learn about your market and your support base, as it were?
Well, the big thing, so our original goal was 10,000 season ticket pledges. And when I started, I think we had about 600 when I started on
Right.
it. And I think we all thought it was a really high and daunting goal. And but what we really learned was, one, we absolutely have the market for it, and I feel like even the 16,000 barely scratches the surface. But what
But
we
that's a
found
lot.
was,
16,000 pledges is a lot. Season tickets. Yeah.
yeah, and our stadium, at the stadium we had planned for the NWSL team, the capacity was going to be 12,500. You obviously don't expect every single deposit to convert,
Sure.
but and you really don't want all of those to convert because you want more than just season tickets. But
Yeah.
but what we found was that every time we announced something that made it more real or more feasible, we got more people who believed and would pledge. And it was really neat because, at the beginning, it's just kind of like any new idea where you have the early adopters who are like, yes,
Right.
I want to be the first person who says, I'm on board with this. And then, people are skeptical. And then, it builds from there. And by the end of it, our last week, we got about 1,000 season ticket pledges. As the news was, that we were in the top 3, you just saw more and more people realizing, like, okay, now I got to jump on board. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, but the response after that, when we announced internally to the people who had signed up for updates and had pledged, and I don't think we got one negative note or, oh, it's, like nothing like that. It was, okay, tell me what's happening next. And so
Right.
that was also the driver of, of what, us wanting to figure out what that next step was. But we also had that from, the other partners that we had. We had a lot of community partners, small, medium, and large business partners, potential sponsors who reached out and said, that didn't work out, but something's going to. We're still here. We're still supporting soccer in
That's
Cleveland.
great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's talk a little bit about Cleveland as a market, because it always struck me as strange, following the growth of soccer in this country, that Cleveland doesn't really have a footprint in the game with a pro team, either on the men or the women's side. I mean, I remember years ago watching when my local team down here in Fort Lauderdale was playing. There was a team called Cleveland City for a little while that came down here, but I don't think it lasted too long. But clearly, as a sports market, it ticks all the boxes and sustains major league sports. So you kind of wonder, why not soccer? And there's been players come from Cleveland, and there's, whenever I've visited and gone into a bar to watch a Browns game on TV or something, you end up in conversations about soccer with people. So why has that been? Why do you think Cleveland hasn't been in the game in the same way that other places in the Midwest in particular have?
Well, so that could be an entire podcast series in itself.
Right.
And even most recently, the initial effort for a men's professional team was, the group looked at MLS, but MLS at that point said there are already two teams in Ohio. We're not putting a third there yet, which is what it is. But I think there's, that's overlooking Cleveland as a serious market for professional sports.
Yeah.
And underestimating the distance between Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland.
Yeah.
But and there have been a number of efforts for it, but I feel like it just, from my perspective, and I haven't, I don't personally know the people who have been involved in previous efforts, but there's been a lot of people getting in their own way, people not working together, conflicting interests. So I think that there's just been, I feel like it has absolutely been the right moment for the market, but the right people hadn't been behind it yet. And I feel like we are the right people for that. And, but it's such, anyway, so I'm Croatian. My parents are immigrants from Croatia.
Right,
My dad played soccer in and for Croatia. And, I always, we joke, but also not joke, that, when we get these teams, we have to have at least one Croatian player on it, because, when you do, the community shows up. Like when I'll go to Cleveland State or University of Akron games, and if there's ever a Croatian player or a coach on any team, you show up and you see all of our friends from our youth club there. But that's not the only community. Like there are a lot of, especially like ethnic communities that soccer is at the center of them, and we have that all around Northeast Ohio. And I think that that's a lot of the market that we'll see, really engaged over both of these teams. But I feel like understanding that level of the market, the domestic soccer fans, the European soccer fans around Northeast Ohio, the Mexican league fans, like all of the different sectors of fans within Northeast Ohio, this is our opportunity to bring them all together. From what I've observed is, previously there hasn't been an understanding of how to really understand that market and look at it as, I'm trying to think of the nice way to say it, but I feel like too many people have gone into it only for the business. And there hasn't been understanding the joy, the passion, the power of what soccer is. It's been a lot of pure business, pure business and real estate going into soccer, and kind of like adding soccer in instead of it being build soccer and really understand, and have there be strength of business around it.
Well, it's a better business strategy, isn't it, to engage with the people who are actually going to be your customers eventually? Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's really lost. It's not just, and this is, there are, we're not the only people who have been interested in growing soccer here. But when you talk to people, like that's their impression of, what's happened in the past is that it's like, oh, there was like, this real estate plan. And this is, it's obviously a trend that's happening around the United States right now, like real estate, driving a lot of the stadiums being built. But I personally feel that particularly with a market like Cleveland, if the energy lifting it isn't, what soccer brings, if you're just like building something and adding soccer, it's not going to work. But really building, because like Cleveland loves sport, their sports team. And like they will lift that part and, show up and be there. But if it's just kind of an add-on, I don't feel like you're going to get the success that you need.
It feels gimmicky, doesn't it? If you're building a retail park and you've got a soccer stadium in it, and it's like, hey, come and support our soccer team, as opposed to like, as you mentioned, like the ethnic based clubs that have existed since, a lot of them since the 1950s, right? I mean, you could probably, I'm sure you find like Hungarian clubs that have been around in Ohio since 1956 or that sort of thing, and social clubs around them, and it's like deep rooted in the community, and people have been playing soccer for generations and just maybe not been part of the mainstream in some way. But it is interesting that you are going to have a men's team as well, right? So tell us a little bit about that plan and where they're going to be playing.
So in 2022, Cleveland Soccer Group announced that they would have an MLS Next Pro team, and they will play in the same stadium that we're building for our women's team. That's so our stadium will be downtown, and it'll be across the street from Progressive Field. Right now, it's 27 acres of a vacant lot,
right?
Which, as a Clevelander, I'm allowed to say it's just such a Cleveland thing to have 27 acres of vacant lot sitting
right
right on the edge of downtown. But it's in like a little corner that we call the South Gateway. So it's the south edge of the Gateway Sports District. We feel, we, over the years, Michael and Nolan in particular, looked at a lot of different places around downtown, just outside of downtown, around the greater Cleveland area to figure out like what the best place was for the stadium. And they felt really strongly that it should be downtown, and ended up really interested in this particular location because it's where Clevelanders have been going to cheer on sports teams for 30 years.
Right.
And we think that, going into this really thoughtfully, so our partners in acquiring the land was the Cleveland Metro Parks, and oh my God, what a gift to be able to work with the Cleveland Metro Parks, because what we want to do is not only, we don't want to just pop a stadium in and say like, oh, every few days, we'll play a match here, but really think about, what does the park look like around it? How can we get people to be there regularly? We'll put, can we put, pitches around the stadium, or mini pitches, or do programming so that people are regularly there using the park around it and the land, and really engaging this space around the sport, so that it becomes an activated space downtown instead of just another hollowed out sports venue that only active when matches are happening.
Yeah. So where are you in terms of? I've seen renderings, and our readers of the newsletter and so on seem to really love a rendering picture. Like it generates a lot of excitement. But I've seen the renderings, and it does look great. But where are you in terms of, it's a public-private partnership and the funding? Where are you with all that?
So we're still finalizing our financing for it. We don't have the specific details finalized yet. We are I should say we have at least 3 different plans that we can have as backup, but we do have a primary plan that hasn't been finalized yet. But we're looking forward to doing that in the next few weeks.
And why MLS Next Pro? Because obviously there's been a lot of buzz recently around USL. They're talking about promotion and relegation and new Division 1 and so on. But MLS Next Pro, technically a third-tier league featuring B teams from MLS clubs, but also quite a number of independent clubs now. What appeals about MLS Next Pro?
So Cleveland is an independent team of MLS Next Pro. When Cleveland Soccer Group was doing due diligence around what league to join, Michael Murphy in particular, he's our CEO and co-founder. The way he phrases it is usually he looked at what is the business, what is the soccer league, what is the brand that's going to outlive us, like what's going to be here after we're gone, and also what is going to keep our options open for growing. We believe wholeheartedly in both of the leagues, in MLS Next Pro and WPSL Pro, and what they will mean for launching professional soccer in Cleveland. But we also think that they, in the long term, are going to be part of a bigger ecosystem. We'd love to eventually grow into Division 1, and both of these leagues give us the opportunity to do that, not only to demonstrate market and show that we have a really strong soccer market, be able to bring along and grow our fan base for soccer, but also have a built-in pipeline for those teams. So we want to be able to build our fan base, and then be able to continue to build on top of that. Just based on what we saw in our campaign last year for the women's team, what we saw in campaigns for announcing the men's team, and then the support we've gotten along the way, we believe wholeheartedly that the business for both of those, both of those levels will be there, and we'll have a really strong business in place, whatever direction we grow. So that was the driver for MLS Next Pro, being connected to the number 1 soccer brand in the country. That said, we're really excited about the idea of promotion and relegation. I feel like anything that's there were a lot of questions. People are like, oh, well, now that USL is set up to do that, are you changing leagues? And we're really committed to MLS Next Pro, and we really love the community that we have there within the other teams. We love the opportunity to grow, and we don't know what will or won't be in place for us in the long term, but what's good for soccer is great for soccer.
Right.
And so I don't think we looked at I don't think we look at any growth in soccer as to us. There's no scarcity mindset in soccer. Like, it's all abundance mindset. Like, the more soccer, the more.
There's room for lots of things in this big country, isn't there? In soccer terms, there is. It's when we talk about having 2 Division 1 leagues and so on and so forth, it's people outside the United States are a little bit puzzled at that, but it's such a big space we're talking about.
Right.
It's interesting. Do you think fans care about D1, D2, D3 nominations? I mean, or do you have to educate a little bit around, because there still is a little bit of a sort of thing where people say, "Oh, it's minor league," right? Do you have to do a little bit of education around that, or do you think fans don't care? It's a Cleveland team. I'm going to go support them, come what may.
So it's both. We will have we'll have plenty. I always refer to it as our responsibility and our opportunity to educate everyone on soccer. So we have plenty of people who wouldn't know the difference, and they're proud to say it. And they want to show up for a Cleveland team. And they want to see, they want to have a great experience. And one of the things that makes us feel really confident about the Cleveland market is that so our hockey team is an AHL team. The Cleveland Monsters, they, I believe the average attendance for the league is around between 8,000 and 9,000 a game. The Cleveland Monsters average something like 11,300. Right. And so it's a great demonstration that, it's not that, no one thinks it's an NHL team. They, they're really talented. They play really great games. They're all, every year they're really competitive. They won the Calder Cup in 2016, and we all remember it. They were part of our Cleveland Cavaliers NBA championship parade. And people show up for the games, and it's because they want to see and feel the excitement of sports. They want a great experience, and depending on what segment it is, whether it's that particular sport fan, someone that's looking to do something just out in Cleveland, families, friend groups, they're looking for the quality of the experience. And so that's what when we think about both of these teams, we want to think about what game day looks and feels like, what the price point is for each of them. And we want to win championships. I think that when it comes to Cleveland, I think that is one of the keys that, at whatever level, we're starting it with these two leagues now, we want to win them as much as possible. And when we get up to whatever level we end up at, we want to win that too. And we understand the investment that takes, some of the trial and error. But I think with Cleveland, Cleveland shows up for things that are done well, and they tell friends. So I think that we're in a really great place that should we put a great product on the field and put a really great experience in the stadium, that people will show up and we'll be able to get them to the game for the sake of soccer. And for the experience, and then along the way, continue to educate people on, what the leagues are, I think that it's kind of an important thing as part of a feeder system, that your favorite player, you want them to leave,
Yeah.
And so that's something that you kind of have to, develop as part of your culture, your message, your goals, is that, we want, for all of these teams, we want to find the star that's going to be the star in this league, and then graduate to the next one, and encourage everybody to follow them to there. And particularly with WPSL Pro, we want to make sure that we're not only supporting people through that pathway, but also their pathway out. So, thinking about how we can provide, full-time jobs to people coming out of the league where they're playing, but also, being compensated for their mentorship and their on-field coaching and, developing leadership. Also understanding if they have coaching ambitions or like front office ambitions, so we can help, bring them into those roles, or help them find or be coached through those roles. So I think that's like a really large part of the culture that we want to build, is like having everyone understand not only what league we're in, but why those leagues matter.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's about touch points in a way, isn't it? Because if you look at if you're a young girl playing the game in California, there's obviously a lot around you there with different teams and the infrastructure there, that you can see very quickly how a pathway can go from being like a talented 12-year-old to 10 years later being a pro and playing for the U.S. women's national team, because you're surrounded by people who've done that, yeah? Where is in terms of like the sort of grassroots youth soccer for girls and young women, where is that in your area, and how are you going to be able to tap into it?
So we have a number of strong programs. Internationals SC in particular, it has produced a number of NWSL players. It's led by Carrie Sarber, who is a former professional player. She's also currently the assistant coach for the Czechia national women's football team, and was previously the assistant coach for New Zealand.
Right.
So she's worked with us, and she's actually launching a WPSL amateur team in May.
Right.
We also have have a good relationship with Cleveland Force, and there are a number of other Croatia Juniors, a number of the organizations developing really high level girls soccer players. And I apologize to anyone I'm forgetting right now. When we launched our NWSL bid, one of we didn't just kind of throw a large net out and say whoever wants to come in. We tried really hard to go into communities. I spent all last summer at different soccer camps just talking to parents and coaches and players about what does this mean to them? What are we missing? What feels like what feels like progress to you? How can we be a part of this? And it was really great to develop those relationships. And I think that that's something, as we get closer to launching these teams, we'll start to understand, what kind of relationship we have with, either there being a pipeline from those teams to, WPSL Pro, to whatever, or if there are regular events or, camps, ID camps, things like that. We have to figure that out. But right now, what we started with is, saying we're not just here to plop on top of, plop
Right.
professional soccer on top of everything, but we really want this to be lifted, together with everyone. I think that everyone seems to understand that, not just having the team in town of you could go there, but, really what that, being surrounded by that changes the way people play, what their aspirations are. And I compare it to when I think some people don't understand the impact of being able, the whole see it, be it, see it.
Yeah.
But, there was so much, people are so much more aware of women's basketball in particular over the past couple of years. Yes, there was Caitlin Clark, there was that, but the level of play, Angel Reese and Juju Watkins, those players, they're amazing basketball players.
Yeah.
And the talent on the court is amazing, but that didn't just happen out of nowhere. This generation of women, playing really great basketball came from somewhere. And you think about when they were born, and they're the first generation that had the WNBA. And I feel that can't be undervalued enough, of being able to look up and say, I can rise to the highest level in the world for this, and that can be my goal. And you see kind of what the outcome of that is, and I think that we have that opportunity locally to be able to put that more tangibly in front of girls, and get and be able to continue to produce really strong talent, but get them further outside of Northeast Ohio onto the national team.
Last question, Gina. I'm always curious about these things, especially with the expansion clubs. Do we have a name for either of these teams?
Not yet. We are so over the past few months, we've reached out to a lot of people just to do some early surveying, just to start kind of getting input. But we are, as soon as we announce this, we're going to start more rigorous surveying. I didn't want to put it out too soon so that people would say, well, what are you doing? So I feel like giving them some parameters around what this team is, when it's going to happen, I think is a lot better to ask people their opinions. So for both the men's and the women's teams, starting later this week, we'll be we'll be putting out surveys, welcoming people to interviews, just doing a lot of community research, because this has to grow from our fans, and it can't be just something where we pull a name out of something we like. But it's also a balance of we do have a really great branding expert on this, and just quickly, this person grew up in Cleveland, has been the creative director for an MLS team and an NWSL team, and has experience with developing professional soccer brands. And it's really exciting. It's exciting to work on this with someone who's been through this before, but also be able to bring in the experiences and the ideas of all of the different communities in Northeast Ohio. So that will be coming. We'll be announcing that in the next few months. I think that we'll probably announce by the summer.
Yeah. And this is next season, yeah? It's going to be a busy year for you all, yeah?
It's funny, when you look, you're like, oh, it's a year away. And then the months go by really quickly.
It's great. Well, thanks very much indeed for your time, Gina, and all the best with all of this. And we'll keep a close eye on how things are developing.
Thank you so much.